What's up, investors? It's the Russian dude. Modern warfare has a way of stripping away illusions very quickly. One moment war planners talk about maneuvers, tactics and doctrine, and the very next reality intervenes in form of the buzzing FPV drones, instant strikes and supply routes that turn lethal the second somebody moves. On Ukraine's front lines, this reality has forced a brutal reassessment of what can still be done by people, and what simply should not be done anymore. Every resupply run, every evacuation, every attempt to reinforce at range has become a gamble where human lives are the most expensive currency. And when the cost becomes too high, systems change. That is exactly where ground robotic platforms enter the picture. Not as a sci-fi fantasy, not as a flashy PR tool, but as a desperate, practical response to a battlefield that punishes exposure instantly. At first, these machines were viewed as slow, awkward curiosities. Well, now they are creeping into positions once held by infantry, machine gunners and grenade launcher crews. Not because commanders are fascinated by technology, but because there are simply not enough people left to do these jobs safely. Ukraine's shift toward combat ground robots is not about replacing soldiers out of convenience. It's about survival, adaptation and buying time in a war that devours manpower faster than any modern conflict in Europe. And to understand how we got here, we need to start with how skepticism gave way to necessity. When ground robots first appeared near the front, they were treated with sarcasm. Soldiers watched these platforms crawl forward at a pace that barely matched walking speed, sometimes being overtaken by half-destroyed pickup trucks with 3 wheels already riddled with holes from previous runs. Because in a war where speed often means the difference between getting through or being spotted, the idea that a slow-moving robot could be useful, just seemed absolutely laughable. It still is, kinda, by some people. So early operators were teased, commanders hesitated, nobody wanted to trust their logistics to something that looked like it belonged in a warehouse, not a combat zone. Then the battlefield changed again. Russian FPV drones began saturating supply routes, turning even short resupply missions into high-risk events. Pickup trucks that once symbolized mobility became just rolling targets. One of the first ones, one of the priorities ones. One burned-out vehicle became 3, then 4, scattered along the same approach roads, and suddenly the math started to look very, very different. Then, on the other hand, a robot moving slowly but predictably was still better than sending people into a corridor where survival depended on pure luck. As losses mounted, attitudes shifted fast. Units began requesting unmanned ground vehicles not because they were impressive, but because they simply worked. Ukraine formalized this shift by creating dedicated unmanned ground vehicles units and even staff structures, allowing operators to specialize instead of improvising on the fly. By 2025, by the end of it, tens of thousands of these systems had entered service, covering logistics, evacuation and basic support roles. What started as an experiment became infrastructure, entire industry. But logistics was only the first step. Once soldiers stopped laughing at the machines and started trusting them, expectations obviously grew. If a robot could haul ammunition and evacuate the wounded, why could not it just hold a position? Why could not it watch a sector, react instantly and fire without hesitation? These pretty logical questions pushed development forward and led directly to the most ambitious goal yet, which is replacing frontline roles traditionally reserved for infantry. And now, this brings us to the purpose behind combat ground robots and why their role keeps expanding. Let's talk about it in our next chapter. The logic behind combat ground platforms is brutally simple. If a task exposes people to immediate danger and the machine can do it instead, well, then the machine should go first, right? Makes sense. Traditional infantry weapons like machine guns and automatic grenade launchers require teams to move, set up and prepare under constant threat. Carrying heavy equipment to a firing position is slow, exhausting and highly visible. By the time a human crew is ready to operate, they may have already been detected. And most likely they became detected. A robotic platform changes the equation on the other hand. It can transport the weapon, ammunition and mounting system in one movement. It arrives ready to operate, no assembly required, no exposed crew fumbling under pressure. If the platform does indeed draw attention, operators remain at a distance, so they're still safe, controlling it from relative safety. Even if the robot is disabled, the loss is measured in metal and just money, not human lives. Then speed also plays a critical role. Russian assault tactics often rely on small groups probing forward quickly, trying to exploit gaps before defenders can even react. Human crews need seconds, sometimes minutes, to orient themselves. A robot does not. Once activated, it can engage immediately. It does not hesitate, it does not panic, and does not get tired. That instant response alone has made these systems invaluable in defensive scenarios. As developers worked closely with frontline units, platforms evolved rapidly as well. Weapons were integrated more cleanly, software improved targeting, and control systems became more intuitive. The robot was no longer just a carrier, it became an active participant in holding ground. But then, as roles expanded even further, so did complexity, especially when it came to armament and control, which leads us directly into the next chapter, where we will talk about how these machines are armed and what makes them effective. Despite the futuristic image, the weapons mounted on ground robots are anything but exotic. Large caliber machine guns remain the backbone of the most combat platforms, and for good reason, I mean. They're reliable, widely available, and devastatingly effective when deployed correctly. The key challenge has never been the weapon itself, but how to integrate it without compromising performance. Engineers learned quickly that modifying the weapon was a mistake. Instead, well, guess what? Platforms are built to accommodate standard systems exactly as they are. Simple as that, simple solution. All this using transition brackets, reinforced mounts that preserve original function. The only true modification is just electric trigger, that's it, allowing just remote firing. And that's it, literally. Turrets are driven by electric motors and actuators, giving operators fine control without physical presence. Where things do get interesting, however, is software. Advanced fire control systems now handle ballistic calculations automatically. Distance, wind, ammunition type, and target movement are all factored in faster than a human could ever manage under stress. I mean, even without stress. Machines will always be better and faster than best of the human beings. At least for now, I guess. Let's see later. So yeah, ammunition tracking removes guesswork entirely at this point. Operators know exactly how many rounds remain at all times, eliminating one of the most dangerous uncertainties in combat. Artificial intelligence plays a supporting role, not a decisive one. Vision systems detect movement and heat signatures, track targets, and alert operators, but the final decision to fire remains always human-controlled. This balance allows rapid reaction without risking friendly incidents. That is the main reason. But still, even though all this sounds futuristic enough, the system is far still from perfect. Communications remain fragile, especially under electronic interference, and mechanical failures can render a platform useless until someone intervenes. Automatic grenade launchers, for example, push complexity even further. Their weight, recoil, and need for precise elevation calculations demand stronger platforms and more advanced stabilization mechanisms. While software can outperform human operators in aiming speed and accuracy, while mechanical stress and ammunition feeding remain unresolved challenges, once again, at least for now. Every successful deployment highlights potential, but also exposes limitations, unfortunately. And these limitations shape how robots are actually used on the battlefield, which brings us to tactics and doctrine that we will talk about in our final chapter. Technology alone does not win battles. How it is used matters just as much. One of the biggest challenges facing combat ground robots is not hardware, but doctrine. Infantry tactics were developed around human capabilities, instincts, and limitations. Applying them directly to machines does not always work. Robots have strengths humans do not, but they also have major weaknesses that planners must respect, such as coordination, for example. All these things remain very difficult. Commanders sometimes assign tasks without fully accounting for technical constraints, assuming a robot can simply replace a soldier one-to-one. Well, in reality, robots do need specialists, planning adjustments, and realistic expectations. This raises the bar for leadership and slows integration, unfortunately, especially in fast-moving operations. Where robots do shine most clearly is defense for now. Positions on secondary lines, dug in, camouflage, they act as persistent observations and fire points. One operator can control multiple sectors, monitoring for movement and engaging when required. These platforms can remain on duty for days, creating layered defensive zones that are very difficult to breach without exposing attackers. Offensive use is still evolving, however. Robots often lead reconnaissance force actions, advancing ahead of personnel to provoke responses and reveal the enemy positions, which is huge, nevertheless. And during assault, they function as mobile fire support, suppressing defenders while infantry moves. In some cases, unmanned platforms carrying explosives can have even neutralized positions before troops even arrived. That's assuming obviously best case scenario and total unawareness of the enemy. So obviously, these operations remain complex and risky, but each success adds to a growing body of experience. And experience, as you guys can see, is everything in pretty much every conflict, not just this one. As heavier platforms emerge capable of carrying more ammunition and larger weapons, questions arise about whether ground robots could eventually fill roles traditionally held by infantry fighting vehicles. That possibility opens an entirely new discussion about the future battlefield, which naturally leads us towards the broader implications of this shift. Ground combat robots are not replacing soldiers because commanders dream of a fully automated battlefield. They're doing so because war has made the old ways unsustainable. When exposure equals immediate danger, distance becomes protection. And machines offer distance in a way that humans unfortunately never can. Ukraine's experience shows that these systems are not perfect, not autonomous saviors, and not some kind of miracle solutions. They do break, they fail, and they demand constant refinement. Well, yet their value is very undeniable. Every mission handled by a robot is a mission where people do not have to step into immediate risk. Every position held by a machine is one fewer place where a soldier must sit and wait under constant threat. It's not about glory or innovation for its own sake. It's about trading metal for time, money for lives, and adapting faster than the battlefield can punish hesitation. As technology advances and doctrine catches up, ground robots will only become more integrated, more capable, and more common. Not because they are impressive, but because modern war leaves fewer and fewer alternatives. And that uncomfortable truth may define the next phase of this conflict more than any single weapon ever could. Well, there you have it, guys. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe to my channel for more videos like this. If you wish to support our work, the links down below. Thanks so much for watching. See you tomorrow. We won't succumb to their tricks, the facade they try to sell. Their twisted words and feeble claims on us all they cannot quell. We see through their lies, their feeble attempts to sway. We do not believe in ridiculous Russian propaganda.